Okay, well, hi everyone. Thank you very much for watching or listening. It's Liam Hartree back with you today for another episode of Presenting Champions for the Simply Inspired podcast. Today, I'm joined by BKFC rising star Trevor Loken. Hopefully, I'm saying that the right way. This man is on the rise, had an incredible win over Marcus Brimage. Hopefully, I'm saying that the right way as well. 40 seconds, guys, first round stoppage there. Obviously, everybody knows Marcus from fight with Conor McGregor, the UFC, everything there. Trevor's had a couple of tough fights since then, but hopefully he's learned, taken a lot from it. He's a rising star. I believe he's going to be a big star in the future. Hence the reason for this call today. Also has a background in MMA prior to bare knuckle. So we're going to be talking about some exciting things, the past, the present, and the future, and the mindset that it takes to reach a high level in one of the toughest combat sports in the world, bare knuckle boxing, because it takes a strong mind as well as a strong body to do that. So, thank you, Trevor, for coming on the show today, and thank you for taking time out of your day to do this. Appreciate that a lot. Thank you.
Absolutely. And thanks for having me on.
No problem at all. No problem at all. So I'm going to go back in time for just a moment and talk about a couple of things there. And we'll, as I say, we'll move around in time. We'll talk about the past, the present, the future. But going back to it, your career started in MMA. I was looking this up with some amateur fights there and everything like this. So I'd actually just want to touch on the beginning of your sporting journey, whether you jumped right into MMA, whether you started with wrestling or something else before that. What was the very beginning of combat sports for you personally, please?
One day my brother came home from college at NC State and said that he had started training, and that's, where the interest started. My family didn't know anything about combat sports at the time. He had a bunch of fights amateurly and uh, told me that I had to start wrestling if I wanted to be good at it. So I started wrestling in ninth grade in high school, and from after wrestling, just started training and went from there. So um, wrestling is definitely my my core attribute as far as martial arts goes. That's where all my strength lies, and the mindset of wrestling definitely helps a lot in the MMA world, and not just MMA, but in bare knuckle as well. So
Okay, yeah, so that's the start of the journey. That's cool. I mean, I don't always start at the beginning, but I think I was just thinking about it with yourself. It's very interesting. So, from wrestling, then you progressed into MMA. Now, obviously, we'll focus primarily on the bare knuckle side of things today, but I just want to give people some context for this. Can you share with us some of what you personally regard to be your basically your proudest moments in your MMA journey before bare knuckle? Maybe a couple of your favorite fights or something, just to narrow that down a little bit, because I think people overlook that and jump straight into the bare knuckle, but I think they both deserve a mention. So, one or two of your favorite moments would be great, please.
yeah, so my toughest fight in MMA by far was my first fight. It was back in 2018. I fought this guy who was a Muay Thai fighter. His name is Randall Lawson. He's a pro fighter now. Now he fights at 125, so he's much smaller now. Back at that time, we both fought at 45, but I'm pretty sure it was just his walking weight. And I expected him to be a wrestler. We didn't know much about him, but in actuality, he was a striker, and he just tore me up. First round, uh, he tore a tendon that holds your eyeball in place on this side. Whole face was it looked like my last fight in the BKFC. I was swelled up and basically out on my feet, and my wrestling got me through that fight, and I was able to get the TKO in the second round. But man, that was brutal. I'd never been hit that hard with an MMA glove before, training in the gym and everything, training to get ready for an amateur fight. You're not really prepared until you step in and do it. So that was a big moment, getting my first fight. And it felt at the time, it felt like I was stepping in really late. And I was only, I believe I was 19 years old at the time. I might have been 20. Um, but it felt like I really wanted to get a fight the second that I turned 18. So at the time, it felt like it took forever for me to get first fight. So that was a big deal for me. And then my third fight against Titus was pretty tough. He was a lot stronger than I expected him to be. I expected to go in and just out grapple him, but he stood toe to toe, and his grappling was good, and he held me against the cage for most of it. And then I knocked him out when we got into it. We split off the cage for a split second, and I threw a right hand down the middle and ended up getting a knockout. But I wasn't prepared for him to try to wrestle me at all, because like I said, my grappling is my strong suit, and I've showed that through all of my MMA fights. So I didn't think he was going to go in there with a game plan of I'm going to grapple with this guy. So that was cool. Getting an amateur belt was nice. That's something I always wanted to do. My brother did it, and I felt like that was a big goal for me. But the fight wasn't that hard. It was over and around, and amateur wise, I didn't have super super tough high level opponents. So BKFC has been a 180-degree turn from that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think though that is something to mention before we jump into the fights themselves, because you do seem to have the mindset of taking on tough challenges, the toughest fights and toughest opponents. I know you say that about your MMA, but even when you describe that first opponent with the Muay Thai and everything like that, I mean, that's still a leap. So, what is your mentality to that? To take in the toughest fights and take in everything they offer, because not everyone does that nowadays in the fight world.
Well, I don't think that I don't like when you'll see a lot of guys at the pro level who are in the bigger promotions and stuff, but you never really see them fight ranked opponents. You never really see, and they're 20-0 or 15-0 or 10-0 or whatever it may be, but everybody on their record is you've never heard of them before in your life, and they're not ranked. And I don't believe in making a name for yourself by beating up a bunch of people who you shouldn't be fighting. Throughout my entire MMA career and just combat sports career, I've trained with the best people around at the time, whoever I had to train with, and I was always the best guy in the room. So I never believed that I should be just picking off lower level fighters one by one until I have a 10-0 record and I don't want that. I want to fight the best possible opponents that I could fight. That way I know where I stand. That's the biggest thing to me. That's what I want out of fighting. The whole reason I'm pursuing a life of fighting is to see where I stand, to be able to say that I went toe to toe with some of the best in the world, and that I belong where I am. So when I got the call for the Brimage fight, like, hey, it's your pro debut and you're going to fight a 7-time UFC veteran, I was like, let's go. It was absolutely all go, no breaks. A lot of people don't know that it wasn't just my bare knuckle debut, it was my pro combat sports debut. So it was a huge deal for me. But like I said, as far as competition, I want to fight the best possible opponents that I can be given. Coming off of the win with Brimage, I accepted a fight against number 3. I believe now he's ranked number 2. And then after that, Bexad, who's got 60 plus pro fights under his belt. Like, I don't. The best person they could possibly give me is who I want to fight. That way, I can be tested at all times.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, it's an amazing mindset, man, and that was something that really stands out about you personally, and it was a big part of my reason for wanting to do this interview. Is you have that real deal, that sort of old school mentality, genuinely, and like I say, you don't see that. I mean, you do see it more in the BKFC and in some of these promotions now, but you don't see it in everything. So it's definitely worth that. So, in terms of jumping into bare knuckle instead of continuing with MMA for the time being. For anyone who doesn't know the story, I mean, when you chose that to go forward with that professionally, what influenced that decision or what caused that decision instead of going pro with MMA instead?
I always liked BKFC. I thought it was awesome when it, first started getting big. Back in uh, back before I had even started MMA fighting, I thought it was cool. I always loved bare knuckle. So it's always something I've been interested in, and my brother, one of the promotions my brother fought for was Warfare, and Andy, who ran it, got involved with BKFC. And when I saw on Facebook that he got involved, I made a couple comments under his posts, like, hey man, what do I get fighting BKFC? Just as a joke. My coach messaged me and said, hey, if you really want to fight for BKFC, I know Nate Shook will, get in touch and see if he can get you a fight. And I was like, hell yeah, let's go. But it wasn't anything as far as there was no difference in training at the time. Like I hadn't done anything to prepare for BKFC. It was just kind of like a spur of the moment. Um, like I'll take a fight if they'll give me one, because I mean, I'd probably been looking for 2 years for a pro debut in MMA. And I had a couple of fights fall through, and I couldn't get anybody to accept the fight. And there's, just a whole lot of nonsense going on. So I felt like I was put on the shelf. Um, but after maybe a week, telling my coach, like, yeah, get me in if you can, then he called me one night and was like, hey, I got a fight for you. So um, it was pretty spur of the moment. It was very very out of the blue. There was no real, let's get ready for BKFC. It was just like, hey, you're a bare knuckle fighter now.
I love it, absolutely love it. Like I say, the old school mentality and just the real deal. A fighter's fighter, is what I'll say about that.
Yep.
Now, with Marcus, coming up on that fight, I know that you want to test yourself, and you have that mindset. We've spoken about that. Did you feel any nerves coming up on the fight? I mean, obviously you felt excitement and you felt, you were looking forward to it. I mean, I can feel that a mile away. But as you say, coming up against seven-time UFC veteran, and I mean, some people will say, "Oh, he was past it and this and that and the other," but and he's a very experienced guy, very tough, very skilled, and it's an amazing win. So, did you feel any nerves, or were you just excited on the build up to it?
I was very excited for the fight. There was not really, I didn't have any nervousness. It's been weird since MMA and going to BKFC and stuff. I really only feel the exhilaration going into fights nowadays. Maybe that changes. I've had a couple of losses recently, so maybe that'll change. But I don't really get nervous anymore. Training it. I trained to the best of my knowledge for that specific fighter. So I see the dangers, going in, and I recognize them, and I try my best to train for them. But there's no nervousness walking in. There's no I've kind of lost the like fear that I used to have. My first MMA fight, I was terrified going in. My second fight, I had nerves. Third fight, like I was a little anxious, and then my fourth and fifth, there was just nothing. And since then, with BKFC, all three fights, it's been pretty much nothing. I mean, other than when you first walk out, and it's a much bigger crowd than I'm used to. There's way more people. Your face is on the Megatron, and your name's going around the stands and stuff. So it's a lot cool. It's exhilarating. You get your adrenaline starts going. But as far as nervousness, I haven't had any yet. We'll see if that changes in the future. But it's kind of cool. I like that I don't have nerves. I feel like being calm going into a fight will get you less hurt, if you know what I mean. When you're tense and all you know flexed up, you tend to break things a lot easier.
Yeah, yeah, I get where you're coming from with that for sure. And it's good as well for other fighters watching this, maybe who are starting out as well, because it shows how you can work through that process, like you say, from the first fight, second, third, and so on.
Yeah.
Like anything, you build confidence, and it makes sense. So the other flipping that on its head, I mean, that's the build up to the fight. But with Marcus, when you won your professional debut, and as you were saying earlier, not just bare knuckle, but professional debut in anything. 40 seconds, seven-time UFC veteran and everything. What actually goes through your mind in that moment when you're on top of the world?
Uh, well, the first thing the when he went down the first time, I know they called it a slip. But that first time he went down to a right hook. It was no slip. Um, and in my head, I had already won the fight at that point. I could tell he just what the first couple of right hands that I threw at him, he just didn't take well. He's a smaller guy, obviously. Like really, Marcus should be fighting 125, and uh, he's a hell of a guy. Just like Frankie Edgar, he wants to fight his walking weight, and that's awesome. But I'm towering above him, and I just knew at that moment that I had won. The only thing going through my head was "I told you so," and that sounds douchey, but I mean, so many people when I told them who I was fighting, they were like, "Oh, like what are you doing? This is your first fight." So, um, my first my first feeling by far was just "I told you so." Like I'm here. This is where I'm supposed to be. So when they called the fight off, I threw my hands up and walked around. Like I told y'all. Even my parents and friends were saying that everybody in the stands next to him when they told him who I was fighting, they were like, "Ugh," So it was a big deal, but I wasn't. You know, I was super excited I won, but I wanted to keep calm. I don't like to show all that in the ring. I threw my hands up, and then immediately after doing that, I walked right over and shook Marcus's hand because it's tough for him to lose again. Um, Never want to be on that end of things, obviously.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's very good respect shown there as well, because for him to lose like that and to lose quickly like that as well, when he's probably built up for the fight and everything, yeah, it's good you can put yourself in his shoes. But the other thing with that side of things, your profile obviously must have jumped through the roof because whereas we were talking just now about the MMA and things like, I partly put that in there because some people might not even be aware of that. Some people might just have seen you appear on BKFC and like, wow, this guy's come out of nowhere. So obviously it's different between the people who knew you in your community and the people on social media. But if we could touch on both sides of that, I would like with your family, your friends, and then people who are your fans now on social media. What was the reaction like from the world at large after that fight?
So within my realm, in my circle, there was no real reaction. All of my friends who came to the fight kind of knew what was happening. They knew what was going to happen. And I couldn't ask for better friends. Everybody who showed up in my fight, they're all longtime friends. I had them throughout high school. I had the friends through wrestling, so they all know me. They know what kind of work ethic I have. They know where I stand. They knew me when I went up to Rufus Sport and trained with a lot of UFC fighters and stuff. So they were expecting a win too. They're pretty on top of it as far as the fight world. So there was no big reaction. Um, Guys in the gym were awesome. Everybody congratulated me, and they were super psyched, and me and my coach were psyched, and my training partners, Brady and Cam, were at the fight, and they were psyched too. So it was awesome to feel that from those guys. As far as the world at large, I don't really know. I hope people see that I'm in there to fight and I'm not in there to patty cake around and jab people to death and circle away from them. Like I'm never gonna be that fighter. I watch people do it all the time and it's just boring. Like if somebody wants to press forward, I'm willing to press forward too. And so I hope fans see that I'm getting in there to give them a show. I want them to get what they're paying for. You know, you go to see a bare knuckle fight, you're not going in there to see people patty cake around for 5 rounds. Like, you know, I tell everybody I'm not looking to go 5 rounds. So I'm coming at you like a freight train. If you stop me, great. If I stop you, even better. So that's how I feel about that. It, I try to keep my head away from what the public might think of me as a fighter. At this point, maybe later on, if I grow more of a following, I'll think about it more. But until I have a following, I'm just going to keep pressing forward and keep taking tough fights and keep putting on showstoppers. That's what I want to do.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's what you will do, no doubt about it. And we'll talk about that shortly. Obviously, to touch on this as well. I mean, your last couple of fights haven't gone your way. You're still in there with the best, as we talked about earlier. Rather than dwelling on some of that situation, talking about some of the lessons you've taken away from it, because I saw one of the post-fight interviews with BKFC, where you were saying basically, I have a lot to learn from this. There's a lot to take away from it. Words to that effect, quite swollen. I mean, you looked a little different than you do now, but
Oh
you
yeah.
were still, you were still very gracious in defeat as well as in victory. Which is the best way. Is going back to what you said earlier. You're testing yourself. All the respect in the world for that. But getting to the point with this one, touching on some of the lessons you've taken away from those losses. Let's touch on those for a moment, please.
So the biggest thing for me, obviously, everybody in the world watches my last two fights and they're like, "Where are your hands at?" And that's great and all. Having your hands up is great and all. I understand it. BKFC is a little different. You can have both your hands up. So for example, just an argument against that. Not to say that that's not correct, but just that um, it's not on my list as top 5 things I need to do. That's not one of them. I mean, I know how to keep my hands up. I wouldn't be a pro fighter if I didn't. My last fight, the fight didn't get stopped until I put my hands up. So BKFC, if you stop defending, if you stop fighting, put your hands up to shield for a few seconds, fight might get stopped. And that's what happened. The 5 seconds for the whole fight that I put my hands up and decided I'm gonna try to recover here for a second, they stop the fight. So it's not always about defending intelligently, but as far as things that I need to learn, my biggest thing is that when I engage, I start throwing punches, I need to learn when to back off, so I'll start a combination, I'll land, 1, 2, 3, and then they start to fire back and I stay right in the line of fire and try to land 3 more. And that's, on lower level fighters that I've fought in the past, that 1, 2, 3 hurts them so bad that they can't really hit you with anything after that, and you can just finish them. Can't do that to the higher level opponents. That's something I really need to get accustomed to. With my last fight, Beckside, I'd come in, land 1, 2 or 1, 2, 3, and then he'd come over with a big right hand, and I'm still just sitting there waiting for him to put his head up so I can hit him again, and I'm getting cleaned. So that's something that I really need to work on, and we've been working on it since the fight. Is just landing my combination, getting out before I get hit again. Like I said, obviously keeping my hands up is a huge thing, but it's not always the biggest thing in the fight. Circling was another big thing I noticed in my last fight. Kudos to Beckzad for making that very apparent to me, because going back and watching the fight, I didn't really notice it that much, but going back and watching it, it's very apparent. When I would press him to the ropes, he was very good about circling his way out, and then I find myself against the ropes. He was very aware of his space and where he needed to be and when he was in danger. So that's something I need to work on myself. Other than that, I mean, just subtle cues, head movement is huge. Head movement's way bigger in BKFC than keeping your hands up. because you'd rather just get out of the way than have your hands up and have a punch go right through. You don't have big boxing gloves on to protect you. So those are the biggest things for me. In BKFC, cardio is not a big deal. I mean, my cardio is great regardless, so I don't really have to worry about 2 minute rounds. I feel like I could do 102 minute rounds and have no problem. Um, and I'm tough, obviously. I wouldn't be in there if I wasn't. So my biggest things are technique, just little things that I need to work on, things that I need to crisp up. I need to learn to keep my range. That's another thing. I started keeping the range real well in the second round, but that's only because I broke my right hand in the first round. So I stopped being able to press forward with that right hand, and so I started, working that jab pretty well. But keeping my range is another huge thing. So those are really the 3, 4 things that I need to work on the most that I know. I know I need to, and maybe the next 2 fights will show me a lot more that I need to work on.
Well, maybe they will, but at the same time, it's a big part of the process because you're learning on the job with this. I mean, you've jumped in the deep end, you've jumped in with some of the best guys around. So that's the way I look at it personally. I mean, there's been a lot of people, if you look at fighting history, you've lost some early on and then gone on to do great things. And I can't see any reason why your story will be different from that, especially because you've got the mindset to learn from it and take things from it instead of the defeat getting you down and all. I mean, obviously, I'm sure it was bound to sort of sting a bit losing,
Yeah,
but
it sucked. It
you know,
definitely sucked. I mean, getting knocked out by Brandon was wild because I don't remember it. I don't remember, and I was never fully unconscious at all. I got knocked down, my body seized up, but I was, eyes were open, I was awake, I was trying to get up and stuff, but there's no memory of any of that. I remember up until the last exchange when he hit me with the first hook, and after that first hook, I don't remember anything. So the wobbling towards him, getting knocked down, having our hands raised, going back to the locker room. I don't remember until I finally got out to where, my friends and family were. That's when my memory for that night starts. So that's kind of, a blessing and a curse. I mean, it'd be great to remember it, but it's nice because it kind of spared me that like horrible feeling after you lose a fight. Obviously, it's like in my head, it's like it never happened, which is weird. It's weird to say as a fighter who's lost, but um, it's funny. I definitely felt worse after the Bexod loss than I did after losing to Brandon, just because I remember every little thing's going through my head. Um, Definitely felt worse physically too. I mean, my face was busted up after Bexod. I had 3 fractures, and my hand was broken, so I was in a lot of pain for like a month. Other than that, I mean, I don't like dwelling on losses either. I'm not somebody who's a stranger to loss. I didn't have any losses in my amateur MMA career, but I wrestled, so every year I had losses. It's not something I'm not accustomed to. I know how to face adversity. I've always been one to come at it head on, and that's not going to change anytime soon.
absolutely, yeah, it's the best way. And like I say, when you meet, because I mean, I've been very blessed to work with a lot of champions, not only with BKFC, but with the UFC and kickboxing, boxing, everything you can do. And they talk the same way. They look at it the same way. They have that type of mindset if they're the real deal, and they're not one of these, 20-0 guys we were talking about earlier. If they're the real deal, and some guys come up the hard way. But I definitely think you will get there as well. Quick question about what you said there as well. Does a bare fist hurt more than an MMA glove? Because
Oh yeah,
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 fans always want to know that. I mean, I've been hit with
yeah.
a boxing glove, but I mean, a fist is a different thing, isn't it?
It's not. It's funny because it's an MMA glove when you get hit hard, not like a small shot, but when you get hit hard with an MMA glove, it's like a thud. It's like you're getting hit with something blunt. Whereas when you get hit bare knuckle, it doesn't matter how hard the punch is. It can be a soft jab. It feels piercing. It feels like something, sharp just hit you. Um and this past fight with Bexod, there was a wide variety of different strikes landed, but the biggest one was the side of his forearm, or the side of his wrist was hitting me on the side of my head. He was throwing those big overhand rights, kind of looping. So that was different. It's way more brutal than an MMA glove. I mean, I've been hit pretty hard with MMA gloves a lot, but nowhere near the level of damage or the level of shock of a bare knuckle. In the fight, I try not to think about it. I don't think I think about it very much at all when I'm getting hit in the fights, which is something that that's another thing that I need to change. I don't feel it very much during the fight, which is a big deal. I mean, if you're not feeling the strikes that are landing on you, your adrenaline is just pushing you past the point of pain. You're not gonna notice how much it's adding up, which was another thing that last fight. I take shots very well. I got hit with, I couldn't tell you how many big right hands in the first and second round, and wasn't really grasping how like big of an effect it was having on my body, like my motor functions and everything. So that's something I need to work on, is when I get hit, I need to learn to take it into account.
Yeah, yeah, makes
But
sense.
definitely way more brutal in bare knuckle than MMA glove.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I've heard a lot of people say that, the only difference is that some people, I think with the adrenaline, it's pumping and they feel it more after. Some people have said that to me. I think because you're cool and calm, probably calmer than some guys, then that might be a difference. But it's still a good insight. I mean, that's one for the fans. That's one for people who don't know the difference getting in there. The fighters will know. But the last couple of things I wanted to touch on with you, obviously your future plans. I mean, this is a big question. I don't know how far ahead you'd like to talk about with this. I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about just your next bare knuckle fights. I don't know if you have plans to do other things with MMA as well. So it's sort of a big topic, the future. But the goals that you feel comfortable to share at this point in time, at the start of 2024, just saying that for posterity's sake, what are your dreams and goals from this point forward, basically? Where can we see you next?
So I got another on the contract for BKFC, and that sums up my 3 fight deal with them. I'm definitely going to take MMA fights after that. I plan to have my pro debut this year. I'd like to have at least 5 MMA fights, by the end of this year. I kind of want to run through them. But as far as BKFC goes, like I said, I got one more on the contract, and then it's up to them what they offer me after that. I'd like to get this next fight, done and over with as soon as possible. If they offer me, a fight that makes sense, the sooner the better for me. So you could definitely be prepared to see me in there again as soon as possible, and you probably going to see me rattle off some MMA fights and get that side of things going. But I plan to be hopping back and forth between the two. I'd love to stay active in both. Like I said, my grappling is probably the most advanced part of my game. So I definitely don't want to just squander the chance to use it. Want to get in there and see how good I am, and like I said, fight the best fighters I can in MMA as well as BKFC. But I definitely got to even the record up in BKFC. I can't stand that, having a losing record. That bothers me more than anything else. So definitely be ready to see me back in there again. See me win some MMA fights, and hopefully getting that in the top 5 ranked guys in BKFC within my next 2 or 3 fights. Record doesn't show it yet, but I've fought some pretty hefty opponents, and I want to keep fighting hefty opponents and prove how good I am.
Absolutely. Well, you will do. I look forward to seeing what's in store next for you. And I've caught you early on in the journey. So I definitely think that the best is yet to come. Now, I will say to our audience as well, keep an eye on what this man is doing, because the best is yet to come. How can fans and people who want to follow your fights in the future, how can they get involved in your social media and connect with you in that way? Give yourself a plug
Yeah.
there, please.
Follow me on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook. I post everything that I do as far as fight wise on those things. Instagram's probably the one that I keep up with the most, but um, definitely Facebook and Instagram's where I post everything. It's where you can see, postings from my team at Battleborn and everything that we're doing in the gym, grappling matches and all that kind of stuff too. So we got 8 guys fighting on the same card on the 26th. So there'll definitely be some posts from that. I think I'm going to go in and help corner and all that. So it'd be great to have, a little bit of extra support with that as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, like I say, we've caught you early on in the journey, but the best is yet to come. So our audience, definitely plug into what this man is doing. Big things are ahead. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. And what I will say as well, a few more fights down the line, we can always do this again if you want to. We can update everybody. We'll give it a few fights. The other bare knuckle one, maybe a few MMA ones, but we'll definitely do an update down the road, and that'll be cool because I'm excited to see where your journey's going, and I'll be cheering for you as well for your next fights. Thousands of miles away, but I'll still be cheering for you because I really think that, like I said earlier, you're a fighter's fighter, and you're in there with the best guys, and you got to respect that, come what may. But I genuinely think that the future is bright. So thank you for your time. You enjoy the rest of your day, and best wishes to your family as well. As soon as this interview is ready, I'll send it to you as well. So if you want to use it anywhere, you can do that, and obviously I'll promote it my side, and we'll go from there. But thank you for your time, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.